Hi Jeff. So I thought one of the easiest ways to kind of demonstrate some of the mobile game projects I've worked on in Unity was just to kind of open up the project and look at how it's set up in the Unity scene and then look at some of the code. So one of the first things you might have already downloaded on the App Store and looked at it, but this was the game for Panic at the Disco, the Panic in Vegas game. And so in the menu you can see that it's pseudo 2D. These are all 2D sprites and artwork, basically, and then they're kind of layered in depth in 3 dimensions, so it's like a pseudo 2D. And everything is animated with tweens and all of that stuff. I use my entire career this UI solution called InGUI, and it's just a built-in. Well, no, it's not built into Unity, but it is purchasable in the asset store, and it just makes doing UI in Unity an absolute breeze, tweening and stuff like that. But so I have usually in my master scene here, I'll have all the different windows that I need to slide in and out for settings and credits and stuff like that. And I'll have like a master manager script that will kind of manage which of these windows are open, which buttons are pressed, and this way it knows how to tween in and out those certain windows here. And I'll show you some of this in action. So if I hit this little settings button here, it tweens in um, all our little windows for credits. And obviously this was at a state before delivery when I handed it to them, and they would input in all of their own information. And then they handled connecting it through a web API to Facebook. I just had to kind of provide really rudimentary level selection and all of that, and then they went and ran with it. And so this is how the scene is actually set up. It's still 2D, but it kind of fakes like a 3D model in there embedded with the 2D, and we just kind of layered cameras to do that. And so you can kind of see all of the UI elements as well layered in on this. And if we go, yeah, out here, you can see that they're making sure that they're always in front of the 3D elements up, and I'm rotating them in real time. But anyway, hitting the play button, this was that game that was like the physics puzzler, and I think I'm going to win this level. Yes. Okay. And then I can restart the level or go to the next one. And this level is a time attack mode, which I'm pretty certain is in the game controller. The basically the this right here says, hey, this level is a time attack. Just tons of variables, when the game gets really large like this. This was basically the core game manager, which is sort of one of the, there's different approaches to. Sometimes people say you can put code like on each game object that you need to work with, or you can kind of work with the singleton idea of just like a manager and one big script that handles everything. But now in a lot of the programming I do, I don't like to work with these massive managers anymore. I like to kind of break up in chunks, kind of some of the functionality that's related. So we can go in here and look at this, and I commented the stuff that I thought might not be obvious to a designer or the other people that were picking this up behind me, or other engineers or programmers at over there at Mass Threat when I was working with David. So these are just all the variables for basically like a UI label is one of those in-GUI elements for text, like basically a label. And I think when the scene wakes up, this is player preps is a method in Unity of saving to the registry of the device or the computer. And I think I was just doing a bunch of checks here to say, did the player have saved data for make it rain power up, in add moves power up. Then I check. I like to name my methods and functions really exactly what they do. Check high score save data. It doesn't get any more obvious than that. If we have a key, if player prefs has key is false, then hey, let's set that key by default so we have some data by default when we start. Else, if it didn't have it, then let's get that in. Or like, so we check here and we say if it's false that it doesn't, set it. If this means it's true, sorry. So if it's true, then grab that integer for the player high score, right? And then, this is a really long script, so I could go through all of it. But so this is function start. So this is when the Unity scene starts, and I'm saying that there aren't any moves left. Find these. This is where we kind of grab a reference to caching our things up front in when the scene just starts, so that we're not trying to look up these items and store them in memory while the game's running. Right, that's an optimization thing. So we try to cache references to all of these things up front. This is the time attack mode right here. If that level has turned into, if it's a time attack mode level, which they can set that in that Unity scene, then it does all these things. It enables these labels, and it sets some text. And if it isn't a time attack mode, then it is our default game mode. I don't need to go through all of this, I guess. And so time attack mode is pretty cool. This one, the dice would explode, and you can make it rain, and then we could. That's this power up right here. We could put that guy out, which is pretty nice. And we can go in and you can go and freeze. Now I've made myself an impossible situation. See, he ran out of options, so the code caught that and said, "Yeah, you don't have any options. Let me back out to the menu." And as you can see here, I like to have a nice, neat hierarchy with our 2D assets, which are all our stuff, and then kind of all the different 3D assets that we had and used, animations, everything named, the audio where we had it. But I just wanted, we talked on the phone and I said I gave like their designers this ability to kind of set puzzles up. So the levels are different scenes, and as I go through the different ones, you can see the puzzle. These debug boxes here are sort of the puzzle. So you just go into this object container here that holds all of the spawn points for the dice. Just pick one, and it has code on it. Basically, this says that these are all the potential pieces it could be. And then you go in here and this pull down, and you can turn this into a green, and it turns green in the debug in the viewport, which was really nice for them to be able to see. So just as a proof in the pudding here, we could just make all of them red. Also, I gave them a really cool thing because they said when they tested that the die falling over wasn't very controllable. Like the physics, we just couldn't control it. So I said, well, here, you guys can pick each dice and determine in your puzzles the fall type. Will it fall to the left? Will it fall to the right? Is it just going to be a default? And you can give it a kind of a nudge with this intensity. So this really gave them a lot of power to say, hey, that die is going to roll to the right. And so if I go in here and play, as you can see, the code, yeah, there aren't any options, of course. They're all red. There are no white die to basically click on, and I made an impossible scenario there, actually. Um, so that was kind of how that worked out, and they could have even had more depth all the way back, 2 levels back, and we could have duplicated more of these points and made it even wider, and it's just really cool and crazy here. So if I, let's do this, and we say, yeah, falling to the left's good. And then if I click that white die like that, oh, he explodes. Never mind. He won't fall because he's white and he explodes. But anyway, you get the idea on how that works. And I have this master game controller, and then I gave all of these pieces. Now, what we could have done on this, and this is in JavaScript, so I hadn't been programming too long, maybe a little under a year, and I could have probably inherited from a base class for these spawn points and die because they all shared these same. This definitely could have inherited from a base class, and because they all share the same attributes. So that was Panic in Vegas. That was a really cool game. It's on the iOS and Google Play App Store, so you can find it if you look for it. Um, I'm actually going to close that so we can just look at the other projects. And this was the game for Sia, and I'm just going to go quicker here so we don't. I'm going to turn that off, that annoying music. So same situation here. It was a 2D sprite-based mobile game, and but it was layered in 3 dimensions, so it allowed us to kind of layer things over. This is the same kind of boilerplate code that I used in the last Panic in Vegas game, and so reusing code was a huge time saver. And I had this kind of ability here to just make a nice menu, this settings menu here, and then we had a music manager. didn't have to make an array that they could extend and add more music because they were very specific and that only these two songs would be in the game. So I literally hard coded in two slots for audio sources. To make that more extendable, we probably would have made like an array here that they could type in a value. Say we have 5 songs and it would access all from that array, but it just wasn't needed for their purposes, and this was a really quick turnaround. Um, yeah, sometimes, and this doesn't happen in the in the build on the device, but sometimes in the Unity editor the text would flicker in and out, but I see that it was blank because the list had entirely scrolled. But this was the match 3 game right here, basically, and you can see how it's all nicely gridded out neatly here. And I stink at these games, but you can see kind of the functionality was there. You had power-ups here where it would say remove your chosen piece, and you could explode a piece and remove it. You could also add time, so if I had 101 seconds left, I added 60 seconds, right? Um, it also had a hint system too, so if I sat here for more than 15 seconds trying to figure out the next possible move, it would actually, the other piece would start tweening in an animation and um, kind of animate up in and out. Sorry, I'm losing my trying to find my manager. Oh, there we go, game manager, right? And so I just automatically childed everything that gets instantiated underneath the game manager because obviously we'd have a huge hierarchy here. Um, but we had the ability to set the board width, basically the amount of pieces across. So this grid set here was just only 6 pieces across and 6 down. You could also scale up the I'm doing this while the game's running, and that'll break it. But we could set a padding and a size for each one of these individual sprites. You had all kind of cool settings in here and everything. You could set they had a little editor thing in here where you could go in here and kind of when the game's not running from a design view in there. Let me see if I go into a game level, and they could go and kind of set up puzzles that way. What else? We didn't really need to do much coding for the audio. It just rolled in the audio manager in the main level here. This music manager was a singleton that just was not destroyed, a do not destroy, and it just passed through every level and just cycled between these two songs. Kind of boring, but it wasn't really my call. So yeah, that's the See a Bop job. And what do we have here? This was another game. We didn't actually end up shipping it, but I thought it was a cool premise, and they just didn't. The publisher decided not to ship it for their own reasons in the market. Um, but there we go. There's my same kind of boilerplate code for the menu. This game, actually, everything, the menu and the actual game itself, all stayed in the same scene. It's just all the pieces and everything were kind of all slid out and they slid in, and so our game controller and everything could exist inside of the same. Let me see. Let me see if I commented this well. Yeah, I seem to comment most of the things in here for the most part. It looks like. Yeah, so that's some of the code. This is the update function, which runs every single frame of the game. So of course we put our timer in there. We made it frame rate independent by um, adding the delta time, basically the frame time of whatever device they were on. Look like run down to power meter control function down here. If the game started in arcade mode's true. Oh, meter time. This was a visual meter that I don't know if we can see it in here. I think this might be it. It's a slider that as you were going and playing the game, it would count down and slide down. Yep, meter slider value. Let me just show you playing. This is going to be a 50-minute video. So we could do arcade mode, which is just a standard gameplay, a time mode, and then a mode of just based on moves. Basically the premise of this game, and I don't think we even got around to popping up some information, but it was just clicking a button and trying to get as close to that 1 second mark as you could on it. So It's there's the slider, but I don't think this was. And then you just click on it. Oh, right here, and try to get as close as you can to the 1 second mark. And obviously, I stink at this game. There we go. That's supposedly 1.04. Now I could have probably went and this is the string and truncated that part of the floating point number there off and just said 1.0. The timer's sliding down. That was that function I showed you. And basically, oh, see if you got too far off from 1 second, it would deduct from the meter, and if you got really close to 1 second, it would actually add time to it. So that was the longest second. I thought that was a pretty cool, simple premise for a mobile game. Um, what's this? Oh, this was a. Well, this is going to be pretty in depth, so we're just going to kind of just look at it at the high level. This was a contract with the Hong Kong Carters Union, HKK. Oh, God. Horrible, horrible music they choose. But the Hong Kong Carters Union, so, and everything artistically was, this was all their choice. So, like, I may not have agreed with the plainness of the font or, some of the background imagery and stuff like that, but that was completely their call. I have a null reference exception. That's beautiful. I slid into this scene. Oh, it's the audio component. See, now I could have. Nope. This is where it's actually asking for it. So this is when the scene is started, and basically, um, if look at this live coding course, um, if it's not equal to null, we'll just we'll incorporate all of this into this block. And I don't know why this isn't auto indenting, but if we did our null check there for this game object audio menu controller, then that would have not. Let me hit save, and that wouldn't error out like that. Of course, as a web programmer or whatever, you probably know what I don't. You guys do null checks, but because I had disabled this game object, it didn't know how to. Nope, still got another null reference exception. Oh, we're accessing it here again. So, and also, I'm a kind of weird in my programming. Um, I don't like to use the shorthand version like this right here, where you'd say if it's not null or if it is null. If we have our if it's not equal to null here, then access it. I don't like to use the shorthand version. I like to use the more verbose one, just for like the readability of it, I guess. Oh, oh, that music is horrible, but hey, that's always the customers. Okay, so here we go. We're not um, credits. Yeah, we're not getting any asserts. So let me go in here and just, which one was one of these cool? I guess this one. Oh, I gotta kill that. And I'm whistling and I'm making a video for you. I'm trying to find the audio. It's in here somewhere. Oh, it's on the player. Okay, because the audio's killing me. All right. So this was clearly it's mobile control, so I'm having a hard time doing this with the mouse. Um, but they were really happy with it, and on a mobile game, they were pretty happy and said, "Well, the physics are pretty nice on this." So that was a mobile game for the Hong Kong Karting Union, and they had a lot of different events. These folders are just the light maps that Unity creates those folders and bakes them. And I like to break things out in scenes because it's very manageable for me in my mind, rather than keeping everything in one scene. And there really isn't any like storage overhead. It's all the same assets that are stored in memory anyway, just being accessed per scene. But I like to load scenes. But as you've seen in some of the stuff I demoed earlier, it is possible just to keep everything all in one scene, and it's just a personal preference for workflow, I guess. This was a thing done, not really, it was a game, but it was done for a company in Germany that was working with Samsung. See, there's the flickering with the UI there. It was done with them to demo this really big, it wasn't a mobile game, but it was a touchscreen, a really giant touchscreen Samsung like kiosk, like a mall kiosk thing. So you'll notice when we go in here that, yes, this is all in German. And we also made it to where, again, client requests that they can't start their game until they've agreed to add all this stuff in. Yeah, they had to hit enter and confirm it. This was the address. And then finally the start game button came up. I don't think they had to agree to the newsletter and all of it, but they needed the data. This company wanted everybody who came up to the kiosk and played this, that they got their email information and their address. Kind of, and now you see what we cloned. Obviously, it's probably pretty apparent now what we were cloning. The cool thing is you can kind of see what's going on up here in the 3D view where these boxes were the debug boxes where I said this is where we're spawning these items from. And these are, if I can get in there, these are just 2D sprites. These are not 3D elements. This is just simple casual game type sprites. I had a game controller right here, much simpler because they had very simple requests, right? It just keeps the score, the amount of banana score you've got, melon and orange, and then it kept track of the spawners, right? The objects that are spawning. And then on the object spawner is where I assigned all the different prefabs. And I did leave this extendable because they said, well, we might want to add a strawberry or something like that. So you could go in here and add more types of prefabs. And I made it adjustable too. Like you could set the speed that they're going to be thrown. You could set the randomness, the offset and time when they're going to be spawned. And then the missed fruit catcher, right? So like if there's a piece of fruit you don't slice or you miss, this thing actually goes and destroys that and removes it. And I guess because we're in a everybody gets a trophy society, it looks like it gives you points for missing here. It gives you 8 points, but I could say you get 0 points for that. So it was really just a Fruit Ninja clone. They were really happy with it. I guess it demoed really well on the giant Samsung touchscreen. And you can see it stored data like my name and stuff like that in the score. I'm going to look in here and see if we can, again, trying to keep everything nice and neat. Scenes folder, prefabs folder. Um, yeah, this was the code that did it. This is the creepy code right here where we grabbed vor name is first name, nuck name is last name, their email address, the info save object script, and basically we were saying if you don't have this C save data directory, then create that directory. This is pretty neat. It'll actually create that folder on the device there. Obviously, this would have to be changed for mobile, or you'd have to do some kind of device check here and say on PC or whatever. This thing that was driving this big touchscreen display was a PC, so we knew there was going to be this. I could hard code that in. If it does exist, then go and write to this text. It just actually saved out a plain text file, and it took that first name they put in, that last name, their email address, and if they subscribe to the newsletter. That's what they really wanted to know. And they got these huge text files with all these people and all their personal data, right? Clients are strange in what they want. And then this is a game that I shipped for myself. It was called Skate and Crash. This is the player controller, right? It had all these. Let's see if because this was internally to my own. Yeah, I didn't hardly comment anything because this was internal to to me, not for a client. So you can see I didn't need to, and that's not a good practice. I know you want to comment your old code so that I don't spend an hour of downtime in here looking through here and going, where does this, what does this do scores window do? Now, obviously, I named the functions pretty aptly named, so we tend to know exactly. set high score, do scores window, do game window, what they do. This game was kind of fun. It was like a simple mobile, um, yeah, and I chose that music. You could pick a character. She could be redheaded, Irish. She could be ethnic, African American woman, blonde. It has the save data in here from the last session I played stored on my computer, so we could clear that. I have a delete all preference saves here. I could just enable this object. Like I believe if I do that, it'll delete it. If I yeah, and so we've zeroed it out. That's just a way to. I'm gonna kill this music. Okay, so I pick a character, start game. This is gonna be difficult with the mouse. Ugh. Yeah, it's hard to play with the mouse because it's designed for her to do different tricks depending on if you swipe up or down. And really, and I don't think I set it up for the mouse will jump, but I don't think this. It's a really difficult game. One of the things too that was really cool about this, and in here, I'm trying to look. These objects, I'm looking for my game controller. I always like to make the manager that controls the ads. You don't see them on PC, but on mobile the banner ads would come up here, but they don't display on the PC. In Google Analytics, I was actually tracking how many users are using the game. The Twitter button worked, so basically that's actually what it just popped up. Let me see if I pop it open again. It would actually grab the saved high score and say, "Can you beat my high score in Skate and Crash?" And then it would link on Google Play to the game. I was looking for my game manager because I did want to intro. It might just have all been on the player. Yeah, it looks like it might have been. Nope. Well, basically, because these pieces, and this is where I have to kind of reverse engineer what I did in my own code here, but you can see like just outside of the player's view, the geometry out there is called out, and I'm just going to let you see the functionality as it works. This is kind of neat. So the player is never leaving the origin of the world, and basically the world is scrolling, yeah, by the player. All right, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Ah. And it scrolls by the player, and in an optimization technique, it was culling out what was outside of the player. The other cool thing too is, oh, it's really bothering me. I can't see obstacle sets. Kind of going. Okay, okay. Here we go. So this code right here with these obstacle sets on each object is they're disabled by default. I don't see them in here. This is a matter of going in here and trying to reverse engineer my own code. Okay. So that's okay. I got it. I got it. I didn't hit play. So it's instantiated, and then everything's made child that's inside that prefab. Now the meshes are being hidden as an optimization technique, but basically it randomizes between all of these different potential prefabs, and it's an array. So I could just say that the potential in here was one object, but I made 25 different arrangements. And so all the way down here, these different arrangements are totally randomized every time the level starts. They're a little bit different. So if we were to look at it this way and this time, they're randomized differently. And so that helped create like a unique gameplay experience basically for people, right? Every time. Replayability factor. They could return to your game and kind of have a fresh experience. And then I just thought I'd open up something that is a prototype I'm actually working on right now, and it doesn't have any real artwork in it. The player aircraft is a bunch of cubes with some cruddy looking particles, but this is some of the newer stuff that I'm scripting in now. Doing coding and then prototyping and doing the art later, right? And it's all in C sharp now, so um, see a different language here, and you'll see a lot of that mobile stuff that I did like a year or two, three, even maybe 4 or 5 years ago was JavaScript, and so everything now is C sharp. So I'm just gonna hit play or whatever, and you can see this is a shoot 'em up game, kind of like the old 1942 or 1943 games that we had on the NES. I'm from that 80s era of playing games like that. And so this is a prototype I whipped up, and it's pretty much fully functional. The game controller allows me to basically spawn in a boss enemy at what time the boss spawns in. Let me see if I can kill him. I don't know what at point I was at the in the prototype. Yeah, so he's dead. Um, and you know something I see here too, looking at the code now, the level's over, boss is destroyed, but obviously I don't have a level end kind of method going on that I can go to now, like a block of code that ends the level formally. But that elapsed time, like one thing I could do on that I see right away is basically we don't need to do any more time checking after the boss is destroyed. So this is the update function. It's the things that are running every single frame of the game. Change our paths every frame. Update the health GUI. Check for the boss. We could probably do that in a coroutine. We don't have to do that every single frame, but we could probably do that like every second or every 2 seconds. But the elapsed time here. Um, so we're checking here if game over is false. So what we could do down here is just grab this and say, because the game over is set, I'm almost positive when that boss is destroyed. If game over is false, then only check the elapsed time. Let me go in here and we're going to do something crazy that might break other aspects of this game, but this is Unity Rapid Prototyping. Let's just make the boss start in like a little less than 5 seconds. Okay, we should be getting a boss. Oh, I think all these waves, the first couple of waves have to finish of... I see that the world's not moving anymore. So that's something I need to do in the code, is definitely just when it's boss mode, just stop spawning the smaller AI on those paths. But I want to see if my elapsed time... No, it's still checking. So... I don't think we're setting game over. That's got to be it. If game over is false, then do the elapsed time. We're definitely not. I'm definitely not setting game over. I'm going to hunt that down, and if we're dead, but we have to be. Well, there's the method calling it. I mean, there's the method, but it's found nowhere else in the code, which tells me game over is not actually being called anywhere. So we're checking boss mode, initiate boss, enable boss. There's got to be a destroy. There's where we create the boss. There's where we find all of the enemies left and technically destroy them. Huh. Well, the boss blew up, so it must be from his health script locally on himself, but really what we'd want to do is call this game over method in here somewhere and check for when the boss is dead. That's the whole problem, is the elapsed time's going to just keep going because we don't we don't actually know when the boss is dead. Hmm, that's interesting. Okay, but for the purposes of this video, we don't need to go through that. I could actually sit and do some code auditing for you like that in a different video or something. The other thing I wanted to show was this is my YouTube channel right here. I do a lot of tutorials teaching people how to do things in Unity, like do LODs, also how to use 3D Studio Max. Some of my personal stuff. Um, this is that prototype you just saw, the Pacific War 1942 is kind of like the the name that I gave it. I show up some of my art assets, some of my vehicle physics. Um, Disney's awesome. This was another prototype I'd made. I didn't pop it open and we didn't look at it in there, but I did all the code and kind of we just barely started to get out of programmer art and some nice art. This was a mobile game, so the graphics were kind of low res on it, and the UI stuff was not final. It was very much based on like Cobra Triangle from the old NES. Again, that's where I came from as a kid, so I tended to remake a lot of those games. But actually, it was a really cool mobile game and premise, especially if you had added human AI to that. Um, yeah, so this was a menu. We didn't actually look at that, but this is a work in progress menu for that shoot 'em up prototype we just looked at. It's just a ton of stuff in here. Third person shooter prototypes I've been working on. Um, this one was pretty cool. I designed a controller to control basically a dolphin. I didn't do the animations or the dolphin artwork, but I did do the basically the technical setup in Unity, and it was just a really simple prototype to see if I could get something like Eco the Dolphin working, and it was working. It actually looked and felt pretty natural and alive. But there's just tons of stuff in here where I've done vehicle physics in Unity, and I sell that too. My Unity vehicle physics for monster trucks and buggies or something I sell in the asset store, and I call it Unicar Physics. It has all kind of cool features in it. A lot of this is art because I do art, but I've also done tutorials where I taught people how to do a space shooter in Unity and stuff like that. Just tons of testing on mobile devices here too. Some stuff. I was working on a go karting project and I had shared a lot of that. How to do level unlock systems, things like that. I also had another channel on here that I wanted to kind of um, start building up. I'm looking for it, where I did try to do a little bit more of like more professional tutorials here with basically showing this was almost entirely code, how to write a script to do LODs, how to do a script to do object pooling, texture sheet animation, setting up cameras, how to make lights flicker in Unity, stuff like that. So I've always loved to kind of um, share the knowledge with other people and things like that, and basically show other people how to do what it is I do. So hopefully, man, I hope you skip through some of that. Probably I didn't intend for this to go so long or be so verbose, but hopefully that fills you in on some of the stuff I've done. Also, again, if you're still here with me, my portfolio is jamesarndt3d.com, and you can go in here and look at everything that I sell in the Unity Asset Store. Um, the This was basically this is me doing business as my own name. These are my own games that I've shipped or am going to ship. Um, so this is me too, Fatbox Software. That's my Skate and Crash game that I just showed you. It is on Google Play. It's got a pretty average rating. People just probably weren't too pleased with the fact that it was um, you just basically there was an end of the level. It wasn't like truly an infinite runner. There was an end, and maybe like 2 minutes in where it just said, "Yep, thank you for playing the level." Um, and this has an about me, like basically all the games that I'd worked on in studio. Lots of mobile handheld games here for sure. And then of course a lot of the artwork, props, environment stuff, lots of vehicles, lots of buildings. Some things that look 3D, but we did these for mobile games where it was just a rendered 3D model, but it ended up being a bunch of sprites for like casual 2D games, so they could build environments with buildings and use those sprites. Um, Mobile game characters, these were like 3D characters that had been done, but they were really low poly, low resolution stuff for mobile. Lots of mobile um, character assets, weapons, typical stuff, and then a lot of 2D illustration stuff where I like to use Adobe Illustrator, do vector graphics, Photoshop stuff, quite a bit of that. Right, that's all vector and Illustrator. So is that, and some of these things are actual traditional artwork and paintings and sculpture and things like that. Some of them are in progress paintings where this is in Photoshop, not vector. That's actually Photoshop. So stuff like that. So hopefully that fills you in on what I have to show off. All right.